that would be great. Thank you, Joey. And then now I'll pass it over to Norma to make our language access announcement.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Norma, seré la intérprete para la reunión en esta tarde. Si necesitan escuchar la reunión en español, en unos momentos verán abajo la opción para escoger el canal de español. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Norma. And then now I'll move us to roll call. So I'll just go through our normal list and just let me know if you're present. So Nancy Aguirre. Nina, I think you have to unmute. I can't hear what's going on in the room.
Present.
Thanks, Nancy. Luna Angulo Castro. Okay, we'll mark as absent. Ianad Burrell. Mark as absent. Marisol Cantu.
Present.
Thank you. Sandra Marquez.
Present.
Thank you. Suzanne Coffey.
Present.
Thank you. Michelle Gomez Garcia.
Present.
Thanks. Lisbeth Ibarra.
Here.
Okay, great. Hakeem Johnson. Okay, we'll mark as absent. Jeffrey Kilbreth.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Amatoso.
Present.
Thank you. Jessica Range.
Here.
Thanks. Simran Sandhu.
Present.
Thank you. Dave Savory.
Present.
Okay. Heidi Swillinger.
Here.
Thank you. Franklin Ungo. Okay, mark as absent. And last but not least, BK White. Okay, great, thanks. So that wraps up roll call. We've hit quorum, so we're good to go. I'll just mention that for tonight, we're going to do voting slightly different for the meeting minutes. So when we get to that section, we're going to do raise hand style voting for that item. And I'm going to have Nina just help me a little bit, so in case I can't see the raised hands in person. And then for our other action item, we will do our normal roll call vote. And then as usual, you guys know the mics in the room are pretty sensitive and pick up the sound pretty easily. So just, be mindful of any side conversations or rustling of paper and stuff like that so that the virtual folks have a good experience too. And we've got the slide sharing. So now I'll pass it over to Dr. Matoso.
Thank you very much, Carissa. Welcome everyone to the 41st meeting of the Path to Clean Air Community Emissions Reduction Plan Community Steering Committee. I'm excited to see everyone here and also very excited that we have many of our candidates also here present in person as well as virtually as well. So we welcome them to our space. I was going to start off also by also introducing a new member of the Air District team that will be working with us. And that is Aya.
Hello, it's really great to meet you all. My name is Aya, and I am the new AB 617 principal on the engineering division. So I'll be your point person, and I'm really excited to work with you all.
Welcome. And we also have Amy here.
Hi, I'm Amy Smith. I'm acting manager, which is Diana Ruiz's the manager position she was in. She's now acting director, and so I've stepped in for a few months to support this project. I've been in the Air District for a couple of years, and I usually work with the community, or still work with the Community Advisory Council, so the regional body. And so this is a new project that I'll be supporting as well. Nice to see you all.
Welcome. All right, for today, this is the agenda we have. After the welcome meeting logistics, we'll go over to approval of meeting minutes from our last meeting from the 27th of January. And then the nomination and selection of our new CSC members, which is an action item as well. And then after a break, we'll kind of continue our discussion on Rule 1118, where we talk about the path to clean air actions in terms of facility status and the rule implementation activities. And then we'll have a discussion activity where we'll also break out into groups and discuss further as well. And we'll go over the next steps before public comment that concludes. Next slide. So just a quick reminder to everyone that please want to make sure everyone is heard. So please raise your hand, whether you're in person or virtually, so that we can know. And then once you start speaking and you're called on, please say your name before speaking, so everyone, especially those virtually, can actually know who's talking. And we'll try and make sure it's just one person talking at a time. We'll pass the mic. And also, we want to keep mindful of the time too. So we want to make sure that we're using a timer so no one's talking for more than 2 minutes if you have a question or trying to answer a question, so we can give everyone a chance to be able to contribute. And then, especially in the room, please avoid any kind of conversations, even turning your papers over, opening a can. Those sounds really transmit badly on the virtual group, so please be mindful of those. And then if you're virtually with us, please try and share your video, especially CSC members. And we'll try and be flexible with technology if things happen. Next slide. Also, for those virtual, if there are any issues you have, either audio or otherwise, please raise your hand or put a message in the chat so that way we can try and rectify it as soon as we can. This goes over some of the things we already talked about. One mic, one voice, so we're not speaking over one another. Respectful of everyone's opinions, views, and we all expect everyone, CSC members, to review the materials before the meetings, including the pre-reads. And if you need to take a break, please do take care of yourself as well. And so we'll start the meeting each time like we're doing the roll call, and then we're using a progressive stack approach to make sure we're being inclusive and everyone has a chance to participate. And we'll always take public comment before any actions as well. So typically any actions we have will have to be motioned by a member, seconded by another member. We can do a roll call on it. Next slide. So the main goals today are: 1, approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. 2 is to appoint 10 new CSC members. And the third goal is to kind of see a presentation on the Rule 18, path to clean air actions, facility status, and rule implementation improvements. And then the fourth goal is to have CSC members break out into groups to do more discussion about that and our engagement in the process. Next slide. So I'll pass this on to Laura.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Nice to see so many new faces. So every meeting we recap kind of where we are in the process. With Path to Clean Air, we are fully in implementation mode now after spending multiple years writing the plan and getting it to adoption. So for the first quarter of 2025, we've completed some great agenda planning efforts, working with the CSC leads to plan out agenda topics for the 2025 CSC meetings. We did that through a 2-hour agenda mapping session. And then this quarter as well, we'll be filling the CSC member vacancies through the CSC recruitment ad hoc. So excited to see that today. Third quarter of 2025, looking out, we are anticipating the year 2 implementation plan development. So right now we're in year 1, we developed that implementation plan and we're implementing it now, and then anticipating having to plan for year 2. And then in the last quarter is when we will be providing the year 1 annual report on that first year and submitting it to the California Air Resources Board in October 2025. Hand it back to Dr. Amatosa.
Thank you, Laura. Next slide. Okay, so I hope everyone has had the chance, CSC members, to review the minutes from our last meeting. Next slide. Any CSC member comments about the minutes?
I see no comments online.
None online? Okay. Are there any public comments?
I see none online.
Next slide. Oh, sorry. Okay. So could we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the CSC July 27th meeting?
So moved. So can too, so moves.
Thank you. Do you have a second? Jeff seconds.
Jeff Kilbreth, second.
So Carissa, could we get a raise hand votes?
Yes, so let's go ahead and get started. Everyone that would like to vote yes to approve the minutes, please go ahead and raise your hand in person and virtually.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear Marcia on the phone?
Yes, Marcia, I can hear you.
Now we have to do public comment first before we take an action.
He did ask, Dr. Matoso asked for public comment.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, great. If everyone can put their hands back up so I can count really quickly again. Thanks. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Marisol, is your hand raised? Okay, 7. Okay. Anyone that would like to vote no? So lower your hands for yes. Anyone that would like to vote no for the meeting minutes, please raise your hand now. Okay, confirming I don't see any hands for no. If you would like to abstain from voting on the meeting minutes, please go ahead and raise your hand now. Okay, I see one hand for abstain. And with that, we can approve the meeting minutes. So I will go ahead and pass it back to you, Dr. Matoso.
Thank you, Carissa. Could we move on to the next slide?
For the folks online, we cannot see the slide deck right now. Just confirming that.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you. Okay, so the recruitment ad hoc committee is nominating the new members we've selected. And so we're going to go over the process of how we got to this before we introduce the candidates. So as I recall, Nancy and I were the co-facilitators for the recruitment ad hoc committee. Next slide. And so I'll quickly go over kind of the process in which we got to this, the applicants we have here today, and then also briefly over the voting instructions, which is an action item, and then leave room for CSC questions about our process, as well as public comments before we actually do a vote. Next slide. So we ended up screening 21 applicants, and we made sure they met the criteria, and the key one being these are people that either live, work, and or study in the Pennsylvania area, and also have demonstrated environmental justice and community-driven points of view about the work we're doing. And during this process, the recruitment ad hoc committee met weekly initially, and then I think bi-weekly, to align on what the processes were going to be to ensure that they were transparent, fair, and equitable, and referencing the CSC charter throughout that process. And the plan was to then empower and prepare the CSC to go to vote on the selected applicants as new members. So we then went on a couple of weeks ago to interview 12 of the applicants, and we scored them based on the key things being their experience, their drive, and also commitment to the work we're doing. And then all the applicants were asked the same questions, except for one question, which was different for community residents as opposed to non-voting government officials. Next slide. And so 10 applicants that scored the highest and met all the criteria were then nominated today as applicants for the CSC to vote on. And so the plan at this point afterwards, we then did a debrief in terms of reviewing the scores and reaching consensus. and selected 9 voting members and then 1 non-voting government representative from Contra Costa Health. And so the plan was to then recommend this slate of nominees to the CSC as outlined in the plan of action we created when this committee was first established. And then we also provided brief bios of all the 10 candidates to the CSC members as part of the pre-read for this as well, and encouraged questions to be sent to the recommend ad hoc in advance. Next slide. And so we'll briefly like to introduce the candidates. Unfortunately, 2 candidates were not able to make today's meeting. And so the 8 that were able to make today's meeting, we'll introduce them one by one and give them a minute to kind of briefly introduce themselves to the group as a whole. And so if we could have a timer in place before we get started. And so we're going to start with Althea Skinner to kind of briefly introduce herself. You go ahead.
Hi, all. Nice to meet you. Good evening. My name is Althea Skinner. I live in North and East in Richmond with my wife and my 7-month-old daughter who was sick, and thus I was a little distracted during our socialization time, so I apologize for that, and our dog. I work in the area of human rights and biodiversity conservation and climate change globally, and I'm really excited to be supporting this work locally.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Ariel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel. I'm a sustainability consultant, and I'm also a fellow of California Climate Action Corps. I've been living in Richmond for about 10 years, and right now I'm raising my 2 kids here. So air quality is important to me, both professionally and personally. I look forward to working with everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Next, we have Brianna, who is virtual. Oh, Beverly, sorry.
Is Beverly here? I didn't see her name on the list.
Oh. So we'll move on to Brianna, who is also here virtually. You can introduce yourself.
Nice. Hello, everyone. I'm Brianna Gastelum. I go by Bri. I use she, they pronouns. I've grown up in Richmond and San Pablo my whole life. I'm neighbors to Food Barn, if anyone's familiar. I finished my Bachelor of Science in Environmental Engineering from Stanford and going to earn my master's in Civil Engineering this June, hopefully. And I was previously an AB 617 steering committee member during the air quality monitoring phase. So I'm excited to come back and share a lot and collaborate on a lot of the projects that we're going to work on.
Thank you very much and welcome, Bree. We have Derebu next.
My name is Derbo Shankut. Of course, I'm from Ethiopia, but a naturalized citizen of the USA. I have worked for a long time for the California smoke check program. I am, and I was a research engineer in that area to make sure that cars emissions comply to California emission standards. I have been also involved in kind of transferring the technology from here to Ethiopia because in our country, we don't have any emission control systems. I am a climate scientist. Most probably within a few months, I might graduate as climate change, a PhD on climate change itself. So I want really to participate and contribute something that I can in this initiative.
Thank you very much and welcome for joining us.
Next we have Carrie, who's online.
Okay, next we have Carrie, who's online.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Carrie Guerin, she, her pronouns, and I'm with Communities for a Better Environment. We are an environmental justice organization that combines community organizing, scientific research, and legal advocacy at the direction of our resident members throughout Richmond and the 3 other California communities that we work in. And so within CBE, my role is the Richmond staff attorney. So my entire work is in Richmond, and advancing our members' vision for environmental justice within the community of Richmond is my central purpose. And so it's really an honor to be able to join all of you in this work, this shared work now going forward. And I look forward to participating more fully in the months ahead. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, I'm Martha Gruel. I'm a resident of Richmond and have lived here about 7.5 years, having moved from Detroit, Michigan, from a mostly people of color neighborhood with its own set of air quality challenges. In Michigan, I worked with nonprofit groups in labor rights and in the environment and in natural areas conservation. In Richmond, I've been a freelance writer and editor, and I have had time for some gardening and nature study, and I'm active with the Richmond Progressive Alliance. So I'm very happy to be part of this group and to help move this path to clean air forward. Thank you.
And then we have Sean, who's also here in person.
Hello, my name is Sean. I'm a lifelong Richmond resident. I live here with my wife and son. I just wanted to help any way I could. Basically, I am a social worker with the city and county of San Francisco. So usually I'm out there, but, I've been gardening a lot, and, I just want to basically help, any way I can.
Thank you and welcome. I think that's it.
Yeah, it's all the candidates that were able to make today's meeting.
So unfortunately, Emily and Samir were not able to make today's meeting as well, but you had their bios and pre-read. Next slide. And so the plan was for the recommend ad hoc is recommending to the CSC these 10 candidates for appointments. And each CSC voting member, we have a vote to vote for this slate of 10 candidates in one round. And so either yes, no, or abstain, and the district staff will tally the votes. Next slide. So the request is to recommend that this community steering committee appoint 10 new CSC members for the Path to Clean Air, which have been pre-selected and recommended by the recruitment ad hoc committee as follows. Next slide. So for CSC members, any questions about the process and how we got it? Yes.
So no questions about the process. Just curious if we're able to know who the other 11, I guess, applicants were. I think it showed that there were 21 that submitted applications, and it dwindled down to 12 before it gets selected to 10. You don't have to share it now, but just curious to know.
Oh, yeah, we had a rubric we used based on one level of connection to the Path to Clean Air area, because we had a couple of candidates that really have no real connection here. They don't live or work in the area. They just had interest in environmental justice. So that was one. And then we also were looking for people that were aware or were interested in the work we're doing and had looked into it. We had one or two candidates that wanted to join, but knew nothing about what we're doing, hadn't looked into actually what we're doing or what the plan is at all. I think those were the big ones we kind of used to, because we tried as much as possible not to weed people out before interviews. But there were those candidates that just didn't seem to at all, really fit. Yeah.
And the main thing to take away from that is we did follow the charter. So within the charter, we had to make sure that they worked here, studied here, or lived here, and then getting the 9 to move forward as voting members and 1 representative. We also followed the charter in the voting members have to be 80% of the total amount. So we had to do a little bit of math, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That took 30 minutes all by itself. But, and then before we can move anyone forward, even to the rubric that we all had voted in with the governance ad hoc last year, was we had to ensure that the application was complete. We received all the forms, And we really had to hear back from them that, yes, they wanted to move forward. So there were several that did not continue or complete 100% of the application process. So yeah, we're pretty transparent on that. So the notes are available in our drive too for that. So I thank you to the R ad hoc for their hard work. Any other questions here? Back to you, Dr. O.
Yeah, any other questions from the CSC?
I see none online.
Okay, any public comments?
I see none online.
Okay, and can we move to the action? Okay, so we need a motion from the CSC to recommend that the CSC appoint 10 new community steering committee members for the Path to Clean Air that have been selected and recommended by the recruitment ad hoc committee as follows.
I motion. I'll second. Suzanne Coffey.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Carissa, can we get a roll call?
Yes, we can. I caught Suzanne's motion. I did not catch who the first person was.
Heidi.
Heidi, okay, thank you. Okay, great. I'll go ahead and get started with a roll call vote for this item. So Nancy Aguirre?
Yes.
Thank you. Luna Angulo Castro?
Yes.
Thank you. Ianad Burrell, I believe is absent. Marisol Cantu?
Yes.
Thank you. Suzanne Coffey?
Yes.
Thank you. Michelle Gomez Garcia?
Yes.
Thank you. Lisbeth Ibarra?
Yes.
That was a yes?
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Okay, thank you. Jeffrey Kilbreth?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Matoso?
Yes.
Thank you. Jessica Range?
Yes.
Thank you. Simran Sandhu?
Yes.
Thanks. Dave Severy?
Yes.
Thank you. Heidi Swillinger?
Yes.
Thank you. And Franklin Ungo?
Yes.
Okay, great. That was a unanimous vote. So I will hand it back to you, Dr. Matoso. Congratulations, everyone.
Good job.
Welcome. Yeah, congratulations and big welcome to our newly appointed CSC members. And thank you to all the members of the recruitment ad hoc for all the work and time put into this process. And so the next step will be for the district staff and the leads to kind of begin the onboarding process for the new CSC members. So stay tuned for communications via email on that process. Thank you very much and welcome everyone. So we're a little ahead of schedule, but we'll go ahead and take a break now, and then after a 10-minute break, we will have the relating presentation.
We'll come back at 6:11.
Also, kind of get us started here. Just a quick reminder, the size conversations.
Hey, Nina, I think the in-person room is still muted.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming back promptly. We're going to resume the second half. And so we're going to continue discussion we started last month on Rule 1118. And so today's focus is more on the Path to Clean Air actions in terms of also seeing the facility status and then the rule implementation improvements. So we'll have like a brief Q&A after the presentation by the Air District staff. And then we're going to have an extended period for breakouts where we can do a lot more discussion in detail as well. Since we're a little ahead of schedule, we're going to add some more time to both segments. So, okay. And so at this point, I think I'm passing it on to, is it Alex?
To me, to Kevin.
Alex.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, everyone. Today, my colleague Alex Stone and I will continue our Rule 1118 presentation. And more specifically, we'll discuss the rule implementation status and some of the implementation improvements. And on this slide, you'll see the outline of my presentation today. I'll start with an update on facility implementation status. Then we'll talk about rule implementation improvements. This is a topic that was previewed previously in our January meeting, but more specifically today, we'll discuss transparency improvements and rule improvements. And then after that, we'll go into the Q&A portion of today's meeting, where we will also talk about how engagement on Rule 1118 implementation should look in our future discussions. Next slide. All right, for an update on the facility implementation status, I'm going to start with Chevron. On this slide, you'll find the timeline for our progress so far. In September 2023, we prepared the toxic emissions inventory for Chevron. In May 2024, we completed our review of their emissions inventory to make sure it was complete and accurate. And then late last year, in December 2024, we prepared a draft modeling protocol and we notified Chevron. Chevron then submitted their technical feedback on the draft protocol, and we are reviewing their feedback right now. As for the next step from here, once we have completed our review of Chevron's feedback, we hope to finalize the protocol soon after that. Then we will perform a preliminary health risk assessment, or HRA for short. I want to note here that even though Chevron provided their feedback, the Air District at the end of the day will make the final decision on the methodology, the data, and the assumption that we will use in our modeling. And we would do that based on what we believe would be accurate, conservative, and health protective. Next slide. After Chevron, these are the facilities that the Air District plans to prioritize in accordance with what's in the PTCA plan. For the fuel refining category, abbreviated here as FR, next we have Chemtrade. And for the commercial and industrial, or C&I category, we have Levin Terminal, Gold Bond, West Contra Costa County Landfill, and BNSF. Next slide. As part of our efforts to improve Rule 1118 implementation, the Air District has set 3 goals for ourselves. 1, to improve program transparency, with the objective to share clear and accessible information about facilities that are subject to the rule. And then we also have goal number 2, to implement risk reduction sooner. And with this goal, we hope to speed up the implementation of risk reduction measures that are required by the rule. And finally, our goal number 3 is to improve program efficiency so that we can streamline the implementation process. And we'll discuss in more detail each goal in the next few slides. Next slide. All right, I'm going to talk about our first goal, which is to improve program transparency. To achieve this goal, we did some website updates so that the public and the community can be better informed about our program. And we'll go through these updates in the next few slides. I will also talk about some future website updates that we plan to do to keep us on track and to keep us moving forward towards this goal. We also have been conducting regular meetings with the community and community-based organizations, and we'll discuss this later too. Next slide. The Air District received feedback from the community, and they expressed a desire to be better informed about the Rule 1118 program that we have. So we made some website updates that you can see here on the slide. We posted a revised Rule 1118 process flowchart and a process duration chart. We revised our Rule 1118 implementation procedures, and we posted it on our website. We updated the lists of facilities categorized as Phase 1 and Phase 2 under Rule 1118, and the categorization was done based on the 2023 toxic inventory data. We included an evaluation ranking for each facility, and for any changes to our Phase 1 facility list, we included an explanation. And finally, we updated the facility status and staff contact information for each Phase 1 facility. This way, if people have any questions about any of those facilities, they will know who to contact and to direct those questions to on the Air District side. All of this information can be found on our website using the link that you see here on this slide. Next slide. When you go to that link on that previous slide, you'll be taken to our webpage where you'll find a table that looks like this. And as you can see here, the table lists out all of the facilities that have been categorized as phase 1, and it includes a search and filters function so that you can hopefully find the facility that you're looking for easily. The link that you see here is the same link that you saw on the previous slide. Next slide. The Air District will continue to regularly update the information on our website. We'll continue to update the status of each phase 1 facility. We'll post and share with the public any Rule 1118 related documents for each of those facilities. For example, if a preliminary health risk assessment is available for comment, we'll post it. If a health risk assessment is finalized, we'll post it. And we'll do the same thing for draft and final risk reduction plans as well. We've also been meeting with the community and community-based organizations on a regular basis to discuss rule implementation, and we'll continue to do so. There have been a total of 3 of these meetings so far, and the schedule for this meeting is currently every 6 months. The details about these meetings and the requirements for the meetings are described in the settlement agreement between the Air District and the Communities for a Better Environment. Next slide. That concludes my part of the presentation. I will now hand it over to my colleague, Alex Sohn, who will go over the other 2 goals.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me once again. My name is Alex Sohn from Rule Development Section, and I'll be going over rule improvement items related to Rule 1118, now related to goal number 2 to implement risk reduction sooner. Next slide, please. There are 3 rule improvement items related to implement risk reduction sooner, rule amendments for intermediate compliance milestones, rule amendments for updating priority community definition, and rule amendments to limit facility extensions for risk reduction plan implementation. Next slide, please. One of the rule amendments that we are considering for faster risk reduction implementation is the intermediate compliance milestone. In the rule language, in addition to requiring full implementation of risk reduction plan within 5 years, the current rule also requires an implementation schedule. This amendment will clarify that the schedule needs to identify specific deadlines for projects that can be completed prior to 5 years. During the risk reduction plan review process, the Air District will review each project in the plan to determine a deadline that is soon as feasible for each project. And the impact associated with this item is that this will require the facilities to meet risk reduction plan milestone earlier than 5 years for certain projects. Next slide, please. Another rule amendment items I would like to discuss is related to implementing risk reductions, is related to updating the priority community definition. And currently the implementation procedures allow document assigns highest review order ranking for facility in the priority communities. And we are looking to update this to include AB 617 and overburden communities. This rule amendments would prioritize and clarify and provide example for priority communities within the rule definition where facility HRAs can be prioritized. The impact associated with the amendment is that it would clarify that the early application of risk action level can be utilized for overburdened and AB 617 communities. Next slide, please. Last rule amendment item I would like to discuss is related to goal number 2, is to limit facility extensions for risk reduction plan implementation. This amendment will clarify in the rule language that any extensions related to risk reduction plan deadlines would only apply to specific source and equipment. And the impact associated with this amendment is that 1, it would limit the circumstances that it would grant the extension for the entire risk reduction plan. And number 2, avoid any unnecessary delays in the implementation of risk reductions at other sources. Next slide, please. Now, I'll be talking about rule improvement items related to improving program efficiency. Next slide, please. The two items related to improving program efficiency are rule amendments to require facility to submit health risk assessments and rule amendments to align facility review and public comment periods. Next slide. First item I would like to discuss under the program efficiency is rule amendments to require facilities to submit health risk assessments. These amendments would require facility to prepare and submit health risk assessments report as opposed to area district preparing the health risk assessment. This practice of having facilities submit health risk assessments would align the program with common practices for other risk reduction programs and other area districts. So after the health risk assessment is submitted, the area district will review the health risk assessment for accuracy and errors to ensure that the health risk assessment follow the strict and prescriptive area district guidelines for health risk assessments, correct the health risk assessment as appropriate to meet the criteria and approval, and verify that health risk assessment by performing in-house health risk assessment when needed. The impacts associated with this amendment would include speeds implementation of the rule, as well as significant resource saving for the area district associated with health risk assessment. Next slide, please. So another item I would like to discuss regarding program efficiency improvement is a rule amendment to align facility review and public comment periods. This amendment would align the rule with the implementation procedures, which requires a single combined 90-day facility and public periods after preliminary health risk assessment is completed. And this amendment is that the impact associated with this amendment is that it would speed up the implementation of the rule and also leads to potential resource saving with the public noticing process. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that provides an overview of the rule development process at the area districts, and it begins on the left side. So any rulemaking efforts starts with what's called internal scoping to understand the problem or issue of concern or impetus for the rule. And at this time, staff may also outline their technical assessments and finding whether that's through a white paper or a concept paper, which is used to start engagement with the stakeholders. And that's the second green square on the left right there. As denoted on the red dot on the diagram, this is the current step where we are at for the Rule 1118 amendments, as we are in the process of developing draft amended rule language. And once the draft rule is available, the draft rule language and supporting documents are released for public review and comments. And this is the middle green square in the middle of the slide right there. And also share with the interested parties through public workshops. And after gathering public feedback, staff then continue to develop and refine the rule, as well as perform environmental impacts and socioeconomic analysis of the rule. The proposed rule and supporting analysis are then released for public review and comment and brought to the board of directors for consideration approval in a public hearing process. And that is denoted by the blue square all the way to the right. So note that the part of the rule development process shown in blue are steps and items that are legally required for rulemaking. And this includes things like notifications and types of analysis needed. And this is defined in California law under Health and Safety Code. Some of the earlier parts of the rule development process shown in green are not legally required, but are parts of our process to conduct early and additional public stakeholder engagement. If the rule is adopted, then it is then implemented through area district functions such as enforcement and permitting. Next slide, please. So as for the next steps for the amendments to Rule 1118, we are planning on publishing the draft rule language, preliminary staff report, and revised implementation procedures in Q2 of this year. And then we will also be soliciting comments after the publication on the draft rule language and engaging with public on these material. Also, for anyone who would like to receive email updates on the progress of Rule 1118 amendments, you can subscribe to email updates through the link shown on this slide. Next slide, please. And that is the end of my presentation, and we will welcome any questions you guys may have.
Thank you very much, Kevin and Alex. Before we start questions, just a quick reminder to our new members that next meeting will be your official meeting. So for tonight, you can ask questions in the public comment section. So I'll open it up to our CSC members that have questions that Kevin and Alex could help. Yes, Jeff.
I have a few questions, but I'll just start with one. How do we know that having Chevron do the HRA would be faster or safer?
And more cost effective. Who are we asking that to?
Kevin and Alex.
Yeah, Kevin.
Victor has his hand raised.
Oh, Victor, okay. Yes, Victor, you can go ahead.
One of the things that we do under the AB 2588 process, which requires the facilities to conduct the HRAs, we do a thorough review of that HRA, and that includes the emissions inventory and the calculations that were done to arrive at the risk level that's that the facility HRA shows. And so it's ensuring we as staff at their district ensure that the information that goes into the HRA is accurate and to the best of our knowledge and to the best of the knowledge that we have reflects the conditions at the facility. And this is a detailed analysis. It's not as detailed as conducted HRA, but it also allows their district to review more HRAs and get implementation of 1118 conducted further. And what was the second half of your question, Jeff?
Maybe another, my question is, how do we ensure that Chevron is at least as fast at doing it as BAAQMD might? I understand that it might save BAAQMD money and it might save, and that BAAQMD has a lot of HRAs that it needs to look at. You know, I mean, there's positive things about this idea, but the risk is that Chevron finds ways for it to take a little bit extra time. And
currently the HRA process isn't reflected in Rule 1118, but as we move forward and looking at amendments to 1118, we'll put conditions and timings on 1118 as they are under the AB 2588 program, so we can time bound the duration that's needed to conduct an HRA.
Okay, Marisol.
Thanks, Victor. A couple of follow-ups. What doesn't it cost us some amount of money for Air District to review accuracy instead of just doing it themselves?
It does. The amount of time to review is, and this is an analogy that's been used to present it to the board of directors. The HRA is conducted, is very similar, you know, relative to an author writing a book. But then when someone who's reviewing the book for publication, they have to do a thorough review, but that review does not require as much time and resources as it does to initially conduct the HRA or write a book. And that allows additional resources to review other HRAs.
I got a lot of questions here,
Yeah,
Victor.
okay. I'll have Jessica go next and then BK.
Hi, Victor. I think there could be significant time savings through this approach, provided that there is agreement on the inventory beforehand and the modeling protocol, or there's total agreement. Otherwise, I just feel like it could be a doom loop for, you know, Chevron, let's say, coming back, and now it's like you want to change this one parameter or change another parameter or add another source. So will there still be agreement on a modeling protocol and an inventory before they run the HRA?
I'll pass that question over to the engineering group.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. So that's something that I've been working closely with Alex as well in the rules, and because the language in the rule may not be very specific, but Alex and I have been talking about like the general procedure, just very similar to the general procedure that we have in our current implementation procedures document. We want to prescribe like this step by step so that it's kind of clear what the expectation is. But in general, I agree with you that the process that Alex and I envision would be for us to agree on the emissions inventory first, agree on the modeling protocol, and then have them conduct the HRA to really eliminate the back and forth. I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to BK.
Dealing with accuracy, are there similar facilities that you have like a baseline to make sure that they're even close to reporting what they should be reporting? Or are you only looking at things that they give you? Is there anything that would glaringly jump out? There's no way a facility of that size that runs that crude or whatever products they run would give you that inventory. You have a baseline to start from.
I can answer that question. So the baseline that we typically use in our system right now would be like what they reported in previous years. So we do have an online permitting system that would do an automatic checking against like the change compared to last year. So we have certain threshold. If it exceeds certain threshold, then the system will flag the emissions for our staff to review. The system also does a lot of other checks and triggers. For example, it does automatically check against the permit limits for each source to check for any exceedance. And in addition to that, I think I mentioned this in my informational meeting from last week, that our inspector also go visits the facilities to kind of check the logs that they maintain on site against the data that they reported to us.
So if last year's inaccurate, then you're using an inaccurate base.
The year before was inaccurate.
Just to add to what Kevin said, so in terms of like selecting which calendar year that we use for the emissions inventory for the purpose of Rule 1118, the area district has the discretion to choose certain year that's most representative of what we believe for that is most suitable for Rule 1118 HRA. So for example, we would avoid certain years such as, the COVID years where they may have low production rate of like petroleum products. So we look at all these different aspects to determine which is the emission year we're going to use for Rule 1118. So that's another way we ensure that, we do ensure that the accuracy of the emissions inventory we are using is the best represented through this Rule 1118 HRA.
And that inventory will depend on what crude they were running the year before, or whenever you got a snapshot, what cocktail they're running, what type of crude they're running, what kind of mode they're running. So do you take that into account?
I guess Kevin, you can chime in, but I guess we don't look at that aspect, but we look at it from so kind of if you look at from a mass balance point, right? Whatever comes in at the production facility will come out eventually through an emission point. So, and that's where we have jurisdictions to review and regulate, and that's what we specifically look at. So we look at emissions, and we also look at, for each of the sources that are permitted, the throughputs, just to determine what would be the most representative year that we should use for that emissions that we should use for health risk assessment.
Right. I agree with Alex. Just to add to that one regarding your comment about whether or not it is a snapshot, in the way that I see it, because Rule 1118 emissions inventory has to be the actual emissions that are based on like their actual usages, not permitted limits. And then we could also base, or we should really base some of the speciation based on like the sampling and recent source tests. So in a way, if you think about it, it is kind of a snapshot, because say for next year, they may conduct a source test that may result in different results. Then for the next year, then we'll use that result. So every year for emissions inventory, you could see it as a snapshot. I do agree with that statement to some extent.
Thank you. I will move on to Marisol.
Just to make sure anybody online.
Yeah, is there anyone online?
I see no hands online.
Marisol.
Yeah, I guess my main point, and it goes with Jeff's, is what authority does a multi-billion-dollar company, corporation like Chevron have in creating a health risk assessment? I don't really understand why we would give the Air District would empower a corporation who has a bottom line to base a health risk assessment on our lives, on our public, our neighbors' lives, and put it directly in the hands of a corporation whose bottom line may not be aligned with emissions reductions. Did that shit, like, who came up with that?
Like I said, this is Victor again. This historically, this is when health risk assessments is being conducted for matters such as this under AB 2588, which is the air toxic hotspots program, which was created for the entire state of California, approximately in the 80s. The facilities that were affected by AB 2588 were responsible for conducting their health risk assessments. However, that doesn't mean that we just take it blindly. We verify the information that's in the health risk assessment to ensure its accuracy and its applicability. We don't just take them at their word, and we question the information. And so it's not like we just blindly accept what they give us and like, oh, well, we're not going to check this or anything. No, we do a great deal of work to verify the information that's being presented to us.
A couple of follow-up questions on my earlier questions, all related to this. The first one is, you said that this is going to improve efficiency. So, and you said that this is similar to how other air districts have, that's their common practice. So do you have any like data of staff time savings moving from the old model, which is staff doing it, to this proposed model? So that's my first question. And then second, have you looked at other types of models? For example, there could be something in between that accomplishes both objectives to improve efficiency, but also not be entirely, paid for. It could still be paid for by Chevron, but through air districts. So for example, you could have a list of approved certified consultants that they have to choose from, they pay, but basically it's all ran through your air district staff for approving everything. So that's another model that I've seen work. So those are my two questions.
Typically, when HRAs are conducted for large facilities such as a refinery, they do use consultants because they don't have the expertise in-house to conduct HRAs. And those consultants are very diligent about making sure they do it correctly, because if it's found that they've conducted any act of fraud, they're more or less out of business. And so, but this is something that's a good point and something that we can bring up in the rural development process to see how we can, to a certain extent, blend the processes as we move forward.
And just on that, it's not just, it's the appearance of potential fraud, as it's the word, I don't have the right word choice, but the appearance rather than actually doing it as well. So I think that is just something to consider. The objectivity, that's what I was going for. That's the word I was looking for.
Yes, that's a good point. And that's something, like I said, we will consider moving forward.
And also, Victor, sorry, one just to add to Jessica's, I wonder if communities can vet the consultant that's doing the work, or there's a community process if the air district was able to have us or other people involved with ensuring that we're getting a consultant that is more objective. Jessica.
That's something we can raise in the rule development process. One of these things is contractors that conduct HRAs is a very esoteric field. And so there's a limited number of them. But like I said, their bread and butter is based on making sure they do things above board and correctly. But this is something, a question that can be reserved for when we get deeper into the rule development process and comments come in on the way on draft and concepts and draft regulations is something we can look at moving forward.
Thank you. Heidi has a hand up. Go ahead. Go and come back to Heidi if she's able to get off mute. Nancy.
Okay, yeah, so.
Oh, go ahead, Heidi.
Health risk assessment. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, so I guess I just feel like what I'd like to see is some sort of air district crafted HRA format that Chevron basically fills out so that it's air district driven and Chevron is reporting what the air district wants to know.
I see what you're getting at.
Yeah,
Good.
I'm glad you see what I'm getting at. Yeah.
I see one of the issues with that is that Chevron, as we all know, is a huge, complex facility. And we can, right now we're going through an HRA process, so we'll have a lot more information. That HRA, once it gets finalized and approved, might be that template or format that you're thinking about, but that's something our staff would have to consider and see the benefit of doing something like that. But it's something, I understand what you're saying, and being hopefully that facilities don't change very often and their mission points don't change. That's something, we can go back and look at the HRA we're currently looking on for future HRAs.
Yeah, I guess my thinking is that if you were driving the template, first of all, you would have more leeway. You could amend the template for the various facilities, and you could also amend the template as needed for various new technologies and so on and so forth. To me, that seems like that would streamline the entire process enormously. And thank you for hearing my comment.
To chime in and clarify something, I think with Chevron, it's already, so far in the process, you saw on the slide where we're at. So the HRA is the next step. So I don't think that these amendments necessarily are going to be impacting the first, Chevron HRA. That will be air district conducted. And anyone online in engineering can correct me if that's incorrect, but I think it's pretty much guaranteed since that's coming up next. So that concept about HRAs conducted by a facility or potentially a consultant, those are good things to talk about, I think, in the discussion on how you all as a CSC can engage on Rule 1118 implementation, since we are looking at amendments, and there will be opportunity for public comment on how you feel about those concepts, your concerns around those concepts, how to build in safeguards. But did just want to call out that I think the main concern I'm starting to hear is on Chevron doing their own HRA. And we're already pretty far in the process where the air district is doing it right now, if that helps.
Thank you. Frank has his hand raised. You can go ahead, and then we'll get to Jessica.
Thank you. Just a clarification. So what I'm hearing is you guys audit the data that's provided to you, but you're not auditing the process. You're taking it as though it's been done according to, I don't know, I guess, is done correctly, but is that what I'm hearing, or am I mistaken?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. We do audit the data just to make sure everything that they report to us, the facility reports to us, is accurate and complete. And would you mind elaborating on like the process that you're referring to?
So yeah, so the contractor group that gathers the data that you guys were explaining, you guys are not in charge of auditing if what they did was right, if they have a process in place, if the time, I guess, I mean, yeah, like a full audit of their process of gathering the data that they present to you. You guys don't do any audit of that. You just, once the data is acquired by them, it's presented to you, and you just look at the data, the numbers.
Well, it really depends on the process. For example, I can give you one example. If they say operate a internal combustion engine, we do have a requirement for such an engine to have non-resettable meter. So we allow them to report to us, but then as I mentioned to you, we have inspectors that would go on site on a periodic basis to go visit the facility and inspect their logs to check whether or not the logs that they put and they maintain on site would be consistent with the information that they report for emissions inventory purposes. And then oftentimes our inspectors would just also go to the actual source, the actual piece of equipment to check the meter, to kind of compare the logs with the meter. So we do some verification on the data, on the process that they employ to gather the data before they send it to us.
And also one of the ways we verify this information is because the sources at the facility are sources that are at other facilities too. And then we have that information on what can be expected to be emitted from those sources at those throughputs. So they can't just tell us like, oh, we only have X amount, when in the industry standard for that source, it might be 10X. And so there's ways we can verify the veracity of the information that's being presented to us to make sure that it's meeting industry norms and standards.
Yeah.
So we'll have one last question before we kind of do breakout, where we have more time for question.
Maybe you can help elaborate on this bullet. To verify the HRA results by performing in-house HRAs when needed. Can you just maybe tell us a little bit more about when that would be triggered and, how that would, what would trigger an in-house one?
I'm not quite sure. What do you mean by in-house? One conducted by the facility or one conducted by the air district?
So by the air district. It's by the air district, I believe. It's under goal number 3, the slide that says improve program efficiency, just above impacts. So it says verify the HRA results by preparing in-house HRA. I am assuming that means air district.
Yeah, that is correct. I can speak to that a little bit. So as we talked about before, so emissions inventory is a quite rigorous process. We'll review and approve the emissions inventory based on our criteria to ensure that it is accurate. And as for the health risk assessment, it will have to follow our district's guideline for health risk assessment. And this guideline is very prescriptive in terms of, what are the parameters they must use for the specific health risk assessment. And this is something that's developed by Office of Environmental Health Hazards, which is it's a branch under the state California Resources Board. But just to kind of get back to your question, when that will be performed, if there's any data from our perspective, if there is any kind of questions regarding, the integrity of the data versus what they provided as, the health risk assessment results in terms of accuracy after they provided the data, we'll cross-examine with our input, because I think what we're trying to do is trying to save time here is when facility provide health risk assessment. I think the main data that we want to ensure that it is accurate is the setup of the model, because as I mentioned, emissions inventory is something we vet and approve, as well as the HRA protocol, which is also has to be very prescriptive and cannot be really, there isn't very little room for discretion. So what we are kind of want to ensure the accuracy of is kind of set up with a model where the stacks are located and what data input were used. So if there's any kind of question, just say, if we have an issue with certain data input, we'll use their model, but we'll use a different data input to ensure and test, whether it results in a very different results. So it's more or less like a sensitivity analysis just to ensure that data is accurate and result is trustworthy on our end.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next slide, which and see if there's any public comment on this before we talk about the breakout discussion. Any raised hands? No. Okay. Next slide. So we're going to move into a discussion and breakout activity where we'll have a chance to talk more about how the CSC can be engaged in the process, and also some of the ideas you already brought up on how we can amend the rule to make sure it actually fits the purpose which we want it to as well. Next slide. Okay. Yeah, so before we break out into two groups, one in person and one virtual, I want to kind of hear from our CSC members that have been engaged in the Rule 1118 implementation process this past year and taking part in part of the community and community-based organization meetings with the AIR district. So I'll have Lisbeth speak first and then BK afterwards.
Thank you. So I wanted to just share a little bit about my experience participating as a CSC representative in these meetings. I've been able to participate in the Rule 1118 settlement agreements since the summer, and there have been 3 meetings so far and have only been a participant of the last 2 because I believe that the first meeting only consisted of folks from CBE. But basically, one of the biggest things is that the agreement called for more community or other community representation, which is kind of like why BK and I started attending these meetings as well. We're as CSC representatives, but the meetings now are every 6 months, and we just had the last one in December. But I feel like the meetings have been a really great opportunity for me to learn more about Rule 1118 and what that implementation process is like. So although I haven't personally participated in any decision making formally, I've been able to offer a lot of input when it comes to the implementation process, but also when it comes to like things beyond Rule 1118 and the settlement agreement. And one of the biggest things that the first meeting that I was a part of consisted of was working with others in the small group to brainstorm and kind of discuss how the AIR district can increase transparency. And some of the previous topics have included Chevron updates, public disclosures of odor complaints. So we learned about a complaint data tool that the AIR district has been working on, and we've been able to offer comments and just like ask any questions, and also like offer different ways and suggestions for tools like this to be more accessible to the public. Also website transparency, which has also been important because again, increasing accessibility to information about different facilities that are subject to the Rule 1118 has been important. So it's been really nice to be able to just like contribute to and offer different ways and suggestions to increase that transparency. But yeah, so I've been able to participate in 2 of the meetings, and BK, I don't know if you want to add on to your experience. But yeah, so we've served as CSC representatives.
Elizabeth just about covered everything, to be honest. And then a lot of the notes that I had were covered about where we are and how we got here. Also, BAAQMD is listening because we took exception with the HRA and the way it was done, and whether it's real or perceived, it seemed to be a little secretive to us. And we took it as Chevron driving the bus. So CBE was there. We were able to stand together as a community and question that. And the report out today sounded a lot different than what it did in December. So we appreciate that. I did feel that the meeting focused on a lot of the peripheral stuff and not so much. I want to get to the meat and potatoes of it, where the rubber meets the road, the 11-18 part, the real 11-18 part. I know a lot of this preliminary stuff has to be done, but I want to get to where we're cleaning the air, right? Where we're getting to that part of how we're going to do it. And also, I would like for us to, we keep talking transparency, but I would like for us to be able to look deep at the HRA, what was asked, and if something is struck out, I don't think we should see just the end product. We should see what struck out and be able to challenge that, you know. And listen to Frank talk. Some of the process is not just the process of gathering the information, but the process of the refinery. And we've got to have people who know refining to make sure that we're not going down the wrong path of what the inventory is. I could go on about the snapshot, and the answer that I got was less than comforting to me. But that would take a whole day to discuss exactly what the issue is with that. But, you know, we just, and also in 6 months, a lot is lost. You know, if we meet every 6 months, and if something pops up, we should have the ability to call for meetings in the interim, because everyone has other jobs and lives, and not working this. They can forget a lot of this, what's going on. Some of this refinery speak or air quality speak is not everyday common to the people who are here. And you can forget a lot of the terms and a lot of the things that are going on or where we are in the process. And then also, I'm just afraid that if we wait 6 months, something's already implemented and it's kind of hard to go backwards. Hope it's not too much time. That was my experience.
No. Thank you very much, Elizabeth and BK. And like I said, we should build on those comments as we get into the breakout activity of how we can, you know, do things differently going forward and what we want out of this. So thanks for bringing those things up. Yeah, so we're gonna have 2 breakout groups. We're gonna have Marisol with the in-person group and then Nancy with the virtual group for CSC members to kind of discuss, you know, based on what we've heard and what our representatives have said, how we can best be engaged in this process and what changes or suggestions we have to this as it is. Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Carissa. If folks are speaking in person, we're not able to hear you online. There's still no sound.
Hey, Chris, I think they were just wrapping up some of their final comment points, and
Okay.
they might still be just talking and finishing up there.
Okay. No, Marisol said they're unmuted.
Hello?
There we go. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. All right. Welcome back from the breakout activity. So we're gonna have 5 minutes for each group to kind of give a brief report out. So we're gonna start with the in-person group and then we'll have the virtual group go. So for in-person, Jessica is doing honors.
All right, hey everyone. So our group had some recommendations following the discussion questions about how can the Air District best engage CSC in the rule amendment. So one of the comments was to meet more often, quarterly, around major milestones, like when an HRA is submitted to the Air District, for example, or whenever something happens, like something happens in the facility, that would be a good time to meet as well. So whenever the CSC asks for it. And then, what does this say?
Oh, that was just about staffing.
Oh, yeah, then there was a lot of questions about, staffing and how many staff the Air District have to do all of the various HRAs that they have to do. And then there was some questions around this kind of process, the concept paper, and we had some recommendations to take the comments that we heard today and that Elizabeth and BK have provided previously and have those as comments on the concept paper so that they can be addressed in the draft rule before the draft, is out for comment. Then there was a lot of, let's see here. Then there's some questions about the guidelines the Air District has, HRA guidelines, and so how to do an HRA. So that's all up on the website. Folks will be able to look at that. There's questions around testing and maybe staff. There's CSC members going to the site to see how the source testing is done. And then there was some discussion that there was some feedback on the experience with consultants in the HRA process. Kind of getting back to my overall point of that, I think it would be great to have, people helping Air District staff do these things, but in a way that's very objective. All right, I'm going to open it up to others in the room to follow up on. Compile some recommendations, and then we also recommended that they said that they're going to have workshops around here, so that the workshop be at one of our CSC meetings. And anything else?
Okay. That's most.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have thank you very much. We have notes takers, so we'll to get all that information to all the CSC members as well. I'll pass it on to Nancy for a brief report out.
Wrong one. No, I'm just putting my camera on. Sorry. There we go. I'm always a technical problem, but that's okay. So I forgot to ask for someone to report out, so I'm going to report out really quickly. Some of the things that came up that was really that we all thought were on together was that Heidi and Sherman brought up the idea of the air district making themselves more public facing, right? Where they can, for example, Heidi brought up the Martinez fire. We didn't hear anything or see anyone from the air district, which we understand there are a lot of agencies in there, but one of the ways that community can get involved is if they know that the air districts exist. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there. And not to say the air district isn't doing enough, they need to do more in other places. The other thing that we all talked about was BK and Elizabeth's presentation on the 6 months is too long. We need more time together. So much happens and then we hear about it and we can't go back and change things. I know Frank brought up a lot of great, has more questions. And so I think we definitely will need to do a follow-up on emailing questions to the leads and so that we can add to that list that you all talked about from Heidi. But a lot of the things here we talked about also. Am I missing anything online, Heidi, Elizabeth? I think that was most of it. And then we got into a little bit more detail on those things. But I think the big takeaway is how do you become more public facing? How does the community, not just CSC, get more involved? And how do we have more opportunities to be involved, but not every 6 months, right? So really it's like every 3 months, but even then that seems kind of, we need something in between all of that. I think that's all
Thank you very much,
yes,
Nancy.
thank you.
Yeah, so we came up with a lot of similar, concerns and ideas. So it'll be good to see this all together. And hopefully we can send recommendations. Thank you, everyone. I know we're out of time, but any last thing we missed in terms of CSC comments on this? Just to make sure.
I see no comments.
Okay, and no public comments?
I see no hands.
Okay, so the next slide. So kind of our next meeting is going to be coming up on the 4th Monday of March, so March 24th, same time and place, 5:30 to 7:30. And we'll have a hybrid option. We encourage people to be here in person. It's nice to see everyone. And a big welcome to our new CSC members. Looking forward to them. Any public comments on non-agenda items before we close?
Yes, I just want to wish everyone a happy Black History Month today and every day. But I didn't hear enough about it, so I just want to say I see you and I respect you and we celebrate you every day. I do see a hand though on non-agenda items.
Okay.
It's Carissa.
Yes, Carissa.
Yes, I just wanted to give a quick reminder to the CSC members to complete their hours for their self-reported stipend, the tracker spreadsheet. It's due this Friday at 5 p.m. So I'll follow up via email throughout the week to send out some reminders to complete the tracker.
Thank you very much, Carissa.
One more, and Eid is coming up before the next time we meet, so to anyone who observes Eid,
Oh, yay.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments?
Anything else?
Otherwise, then we call this meeting to a close. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you, everyone. All right.